At the heart of the chaos stood Alexander, surrounded by stacks of legal documents and flashing screens reporting his downfall. He was a man who had built himself from nothing, growing up in cramped apartments, working jobs that broke his back and tested his patience, dreaming of building something that would outlive the struggles of his childhood. And for a while, he had succeeded. His company was known for innovation, generosity, and projects that brought jobs to thousands. But now, an anonymous whistleblower, later proven false, accused him of financial misconduct. The media devoured the story. Partners withdrew, investors panicked, and within hours, the man who once seemed unstoppable found himself abandoned. Yet the story did not begin in boardrooms, nor in the chaos of paparazzi flashes. It began in a small cafe tucked between two old brick buildings, a place Alexander visited quietly every morning, far away from the polished restaurants he could have fine-dined in. It was in that cafe that he met Lana. Lana was a waitress who carried a kindness deeper than anything she was conscious of. Her life was difficult, working double shifts to support her younger brother, taking buses late at night in a neighborhood that did not always feel safe, eating leftovers instead of proper meals, but she had a warmth that made strangers feel like friends. She noticed things, the way people looked tired, the way they didn't say what they were feeling, the way the world wore people down slowly and silently. Alexander had noticed her kindness from the very first day she served him coffee with a sincerity he wasn't used to. For months, they exchanged small moments, not conversations deep enough to call friendship, but not shallow enough to be meaningless. So when Lana saw the news on the cafe's small television, she felt something she didn't expect. A pull in her chest, a sense of wrongness, as if the world was too quick to tear down someone who didn't even get a chance to breathe. Her co-workers talked about the scandal. Customers shared their opinions loudly. Some even cheered at the fall of a rich man, craving drama more than truth. But Lana simply stood by the counter, gripping a coffee mug tighter than she intended, her heart telling her something her mind couldn't explain. Later that evening, after her shift, she walked to Alexander's office. She didn't know what she expected. Security blocking the doors, cameras everywhere, or maybe a man who no longer wanted to see anyone. But the building was eerily quiet, the lobby empty, as if the world had already decided he wasn't worth protecting. When she reached the top floor, she found him alone, sitting in a dimly lit office. Papers were scattered everywhere, the air heavy with exhaustion and the crushing weight of humiliation. His hands trembled not with fear, but with a loneliness he didn't know how to admit. Lana didn't speak. She simply walked forward and placed a paper cup of warm coffee on the edge of his desk, the same way she did every morning. Alexander lifted his eyes, surprised. No one else had come. Not his board members, not his advisors, not the people who swore they owed him everything. But she did. That moment, small, gentle, and unplanned, became the thread that held him together when everything else was tearing apart. Alexander tried to tell her she didn't need to be there, that this wasn't her fight, that she should go home and stay away from him for her own safety. But Lana refused quietly, simply pulling up a chair and saying she didn't care about rumors or headlines. She cared about people, and he was someone who needed someone. Over the next few days, while the world continued to label him a villain, Lana stayed at the office with him during late nights, bringing him real food instead of whatever snacks he grabbed out of stress, organizing his documents, reminding him to drink water, and sometimes just sitting beside him in silence, because sometimes silence itself was a form of healing. She didn't know corporate law, didn't understand the intricacies of business, and certainly wasn't knowledgeable about the crisis he was facing. But what she did have was loyalty, the kind of loyalty that cannot be bought, negotiated, or manufactured. And loyalty in those dark days became more valuable than anything money could ever buy. Alexander slowly began opening up, sharing pieces of his story he had never told anyone. How he grew up with a father who worked 2 jobs, and a mother who sacrificed her dreams so he could chase his.
How he promised himself he would never let greed ruin him. How this scandal cut deeper than losing money. It made him feel like he had failed the very values he lived by. Lana listened, her heart aching not for the billionaire the world saw, but for the man who felt like a child lost in a storm he didn't create. She encouraged him, reminded him of the good he had done, the lives he had changed, the opportunities he had created for people like her. She told him that one accusation did not erase a lifetime of integrity, not if he continued to fight. Those nights rebuilt him. Her presence steadied him, anchored him, and reminded him of his own strength. Meanwhile, something else was happening outside. A firm of independent investigators, the ones he paid out of his own pocket, discovered that the accusations against him were false. Emails were fabricated, documents were altered, and the whistleblower was part of a scheme orchestrated by one of his biggest rivals. The truth was coming. The storm was about to shift direction. But Alexander didn't know that yet. The pressure grew heavier each day. Reporters camped outside the building. Protesters demanded justice without knowing the full story. Online comments grew crueler, many celebrating his downfall. And yet, within the quiet safety of his office, Lana continued to show up, day after day, even when she got sick from exhaustion or had family issues pulling her in different directions. Her loyalty was beginning to cost her, mentally, financially, emotionally, but she stayed because she believed in something the world often forgets, that a person should not be judged solely at their worst moment. One night, when Alexander looked more defeated than ever, Lana gently reminded him that storms don't last forever, and that truth, though often slow, eventually rises. It was the first time she saw a flicker of hope in his eyes. Real hope, the kind that grows only when someone else believes in you enough for both of you. Then the breakthrough came. The investigators revealed their findings. Proof of forgery, proof of sabotage, proof that Alexander had been set up in one of the most calculated acts of corporate betrayal in years. Within hours, the media corrected their headlines, the stock began to recover, and the public shifted its tone. The people who abandoned him suddenly wanted to return, investors, partners, even former friends. They sent flowers, messages, apologies. But Alexander didn't forget who stayed. He didn't forget the quiet waitress who sat in that office when the world turned its back on him. He visited her cafe the next morning, not with bodyguards or business associates, but alone. When he stepped inside, Lana froze with shock. Alexander approached her counter not as a billionaire returning to his routine, but as a man who wanted to express gratitude that went far beyond words. He told her that her loyalty had saved him, not just from losing his company, but from losing himself. He told her she gave him strength when he had none, faith when he felt hopeless, and light when he was swallowed by darkness. Their bond grew deeper after that day, not because of wealth or status, but because of something more powerful, a shared humanity forged in the fire of adversity. Months later, Lana was offered a new role, not as a waitress, but as the head of a new community program Alexander created in her honor, designed to help people facing difficult times get support, guidance, and opportunities. She accepted it with tears in her eyes. Her life changed, but not because she chased success, because she chose compassion when it was hardest. The world would later tell stories about Alexander Hale's comeback. Journalists praised his resilience. Analysts praised his strategy. But Alexander always corrected them. His comeback wasn't built on power or money. It was built on the loyalty of one woman who stayed when everyone else walked away. And in time, the world understood exactly what that meant.